The United States is a land of progress, technology, and restless ambition. Yet hidden in its quiet corners are reminders of a darker past, places where hope died and shadows linger. Among them, none are more feared than the abandoned psychiatric hospitals, the asylums. These buildings were meant to heal the mind, but instead they broke it. Decades ago, when mental illness was poorly understood, patients were sent away, locked behind tall iron gates, separated from society and often forgotten. Many of them never returned home, their names lost in the dust of history, their cries absorbed into the very bricks and beams of the asylums that confined them. Pause. One such place stands even today, silent, looming, and decayed. Briarwood State Hospital in rural Pennsylvania. At first glance, it is nothing but a ruin. Broken windows, ivy crawling across the stone, corridors filled with dust and silence. But for those who dare to enter, Briarwood is anything but empty. Local legends whisper of figures seen walking the upper floors, doors slamming in the dead of night, and the sound of gurney wheels rolling across the tiles, even though the hospital has been shut down for over 50 years. Explorers tell of sudden cold spots, their breath visible in the air even in the heat of summer, and of faint voices calling their names when no one is there. Tonight we step inside Briarwood, not as patients, not as doctors, but as witnesses. What you are about to hear is not a simple ghost story, but a descent into one of America's darkest corners, where the past refuses to rest. Echoes the arrival, imagine it. A long, winding road through the woods. The sky is gray, the sun low. And then, there it is, Briarwood State Hospital. A hulking, lifeless structure. Its windows dark like empty eyes, staring across the forest. Its walls stretch wide, as though built to keep something in, not out. A group of urban explorers once came here on a summer night. They wanted to document the asylum, capture evidence of the paranormal, and prove that the legends were real. They carried cameras, flashlights, and just enough courage to mask the fear in their voices. They laughed nervously as they stepped through the broken gates, not realizing that laughter would not follow them for long. Slower, chilling tone. As they pushed open the heavy metal doors, the sound echoed through the hollow building. Dust swirled in their flashlight beams. The air was thick, stale, almost heavy, as if the building itself exhaled a long, tired breath after 50 years of silence. Long before it became a ruin, Briarwood State Hospital was alive, but not in the way a place should be. Built in the early 1900s, it was meant to house nearly 2,000 patients. Men and women with broken minds, soldiers returning from war with invisible wounds, children abandoned because they were different. The hospital was their prison and their world. For decades, it swallowed them whole. Inside Briarwood, the treatments were harsh. Lobotomies performed with crude precision. Electroshock therapy administered without mercy. Patients restrained in solitary cells, left for days in silence. The doctors called it progress. The nurses called it necessary. The patients called it hell. A pause, low and eerie. There are records, old yellowed papers, speaking of screams that never stopped, of patients clawing at walls until their fingers bled, of shadows seen walking the halls long after lights were turned out. Some say the doctors themselves began to change, haunted by the very madness they tried to cure. And then the deaths began. Patients vanishing overnight, their bodies never found. Some believed they were buried beneath the hospital, in tunnels that stretch for miles under the earth. Others claimed the doctors conducted secret experiments, pushing beyond medicine into something darker, something that left behind restless echoes. Ubrat to the explorers, the group of explorers, knew some of these stories. They had read the articles, watched grainy videos online, but they wanted proof, and proof required stepping deeper inside. With each room they entered, the silence grew heavier. Their laughter had faded now, replaced by uneasy whispers. One of them, Jason, was filming. His camera caught peeling paint, shattered glass, the flicker of his flashlight bouncing across broken wheelchairs left in the hall. Another, Melissa, stayed close to the group, her eyes darting to every shadow. The third, Ryan, tried to act brave, leading the way, but even his voice trembled as he said, "Come on, it's just an old building." Slower, chilling delivery, but the building disagreed. As they passed what used to be the children's ward, a toy rolled across the floor. No one had touched it. Their flashlights froze on it, the tiny wooden wheels clicking to a stop. They tried to laugh it off, but not one of them bent to pick it up. The moaning sound grew louder. It echoed down the tunnel walls, twisting and bending, until it felt as if the noise was inside their skulls. The explorers froze. Jason's camera shook in his hand. Melissa covered her mouth, her eyes wide with terror. And Ryan, the one who had laughed at the beginning, he no longer laughed. His lips trembled as he whispered, that sounded like a person. But there were no people here. The hospital had been abandoned for 50 years. Every door chained, every window sealed. No one was supposed to be inside, and yet something was. The moan turned into a whisper. A single word carried on the cold air. "Stay!" Melissa's flashlight flickered, then died. In that sudden darkness, they heard footsteps. Not theirs, not human. Slow, dragging, scraping against the ground. Jason swung his camera toward the sound, desperate to capture it, but all he caught was a glimpse. A shadow, tall and thin, gliding across the far end of the hall before vanishing into the dark. Damast 6. The hospital awakens. They ran. Their footsteps thundered against the hollow floor. But Briarwood was not a place you could escape so easily. Corridors twisted, stairways doubled back, and doors that should have led outside opened into deeper chambers of the hospital. The explorers found themselves back in the main ward, where rows of rusted beds stood like skeletons of the past. And on one of those beds lay something, a shape, pale and motionless under a torn sheet. Melissa gasped, her hands trembling as she pointed. Jason lifted his camera. The sheet began to rise, slowly, as if something beneath it was breathing. They screamed, bolting toward the exit, but the doors slammed shut in front of them, the iron gate locking with a force that rattled the walls. The building shook, dust falling like ash from the ceiling. It was as if the asylum itself had awakened. Act 7. The Trapped Souls. In the silence that followed, voices began to whisper. Not one, not two, but dozens, layered on top of each other, rising and falling like waves. Some cried, some laughed, some begged. The explorers pressed their hands to their ears, but the voices only grew louder, filling the halls, seeping into their bones. Jason's camera caught them, faces appearing in the broken glass of windows, in the reflection of steel doors. Hollow eyes, open mouths, patients long dead, now watching, reaching through the veil of time. Ryan shouted, "We have to get out!" But the asylum did not want them to leave. It never did. Those who entered became part of it. The explorers were no longer visitors. They were prisoners. The explorers huddled together, their flashlights trembling in their hands. Jason whispered, "Keep moving, don't stop." But every corridor they entered only led them deeper into the asylum's heart. The walls groaned, as though the building itself breathed, alive and aware of their fear. Melissa froze, her eyes locked on a figure standing at the end of the hall. A woman, dressed in a torn hospital gown, her head tilted, her hair hanging in tangled clumps. The woman's mouth opened wider and wider until the skin at the corners split. A scream poured out, high, shrill, inhuman, that rattled the metal frames of the beds. Ryan dropped his flashlight and ran, but the dark swallowed him instantly. His footsteps echoed, then cut off with a sharp cry. When the sound died, silence fell again. Jason and Melissa were alone, or at least they thought they were. From the walls, hands began to emerge. Pale, skeletal fingers stretching from the cracks, reaching, clawing, desperate to pull them in. Jason lifted his camera, the red recording light blinking in the shadows. "If anyone finds this," he whispered, "we didn't imagine it. The asylum is alive."